Okay, I think I'm live. Yay. Right. Just give it a moment here. Okay. Hello, beautiful souls, beautiful sisters. I'm just going to take a moment here to allow the spaciousness to gather for those who are called to join me live. Hmm. And if you are here live, I would love to know. You can drop in the comments, just say hi. Just gotta make sure everything's good here on my end. Yay, blessings. Okay, awesome. It's so interesting. Facebook is such an interesting thing because it doesn't show me here. I don't know. I can't see anything. So anyway, I'm just gonna flow with today and yeah, I'm really excited to drop in. So I know a lot of you will be catching up on a replay as well. So yeah, blessings. I'm super excited. We are moving into the Unhooked portal beginning on Monday. The audio transmissions are going to be released, and we're going to have a really beautiful week of connection, witnessing, and sisterhood as we lead up to the ceremony and the dismantling on Friday, which is a week from now. So I'm super excited about this. I just have to say, it has been so much fun to co-create this experience with Jenna. I have been having such an incredible time in sovereign co-creation with my soul sister, just tracking the field, the collective response. And we each have been receiving so much intelligence around this grid system and how it's playing out in the collective field. You may have been noticing it too if you're in the online space and seeing the coming to light of certain leaders and influencers that are, having a great reach and impact on humanity with their platforms. And so over the coming months and years, with the transition of this new Earth grid that I'm going to be birthing next week, especially connected to this particular online educational service-based platform of reaching humanity through the online matrix, we're going to see a lot of leaders transition out. So, false light leaders who have been in a place of high position, that have a lot of influence, that have actually been causing a lot of harm and damaging a lot of people, they're going to be moved out of their positions. And true leaders with integrity who are here to actually, live in that frequency of divine will and to be the pure vessel that aren't using any of the manipulation tactics that aren't compromised at higher stations of identity either, which is basically like being operated and controlled and influenced through their bondage or agreements that they've made with others that are actually pushing an agenda, whether they know it or not. And so, as we witness this shift within the collective space, it's going to be really exciting because people are going to start to receive what they actually need, and they're going to be able to heal from the experiences that they've gone through. So, my intention with dropping in live today is to answer some questions that I've been receiving from sisters who have been coming into Unhooked, for women that I've been having conversations with behind the scenes. And of course, if you are here live and you want to ask any questions, I'm open to that as well if you are here. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of bring through this flow. And one of the things that God was placing on my heart to share, which is so important, is that we have to understand that there is a deeper agenda being pushed through the online space. It is connected to the AI assimilation agenda and the AI timelines to assimilate humanity into co-creating with AI rather than with the one true living God source. And that is also deeply linked to the false light agenda of people staying in like circular, like cycles, hamster wheel experiences where they're not actually breaking through and um, co-creating with God in a way that actually fulfills their highest destiny and what they're here to do. And so unfortunately, because of the way the grid system works, and if that's something, that you're new to, God just wanted me to touch on that today, that we have to understand that a lot of people that are operating within the online coaching matrix grid and are plugged into that, they don't even know that it exists and that it's actually sending them signals and messages and there's programming that's coming through the overlay, which is the matrix itself, and that's being sent out. And then it's going out, and it's very subtle. Some of it is stronger. If you have an eye for it and if you've been tracking it, you can see what the themes are. And of course, I've shared a lot of that. So has Jenna. Like we've been sharing content around that to support you in that and just being able to like track it. But these messages and the overall agenda has different things that it's promoting because it has a goal in mind to keep people online, to keep them feeding a system that is being used as a weaponized tool, essentially, to control humanity. So it's a lot like all the other fallen grids that grid workers have been dismantling for years, right? Of this is a control grid and it is wanting to control people through personal development and spiritual healing. And unfortunately, it's very toxic and it's a very advanced system. I've been extensively tracking it for several years and it's yeah, it's coming to fall though. So this is very exciting. So with all of that, I want you to know that, like, if you've noticed, you've been, in it, if you've been deep in it, like, a lot of us have been sent into it. And especially, like, for those of us that are wayshowers that are here to create a new grid system, a new way of serving humanity that goes outside of these agendas and that isn't hooked into these threads of keeping people out of their sovereignty and giving away their authority, right? That's why Unhooked is called the organic authority reclamation, because you are going to reclaim your organic authority. And so I want to share a few pieces today just to really like lay this out before we get into sacred space next week and really just kind of help prepare you and also like open up the opportunity for reclamation because whenever we go through a reclamation there's a shedding process because we're releasing and then we're retrieving, so it's a really exciting time um for the collective and people are ready for it. They're ready for authentic leaders with integrity. They're ready for people to be held accountable as well who have been harming people. And what is so important to notice in this matrix is that there's so much gaslighting that happens of like turning it around and all these like false light belief systems of you created this or that's just you doing it and this is a thing, and like there's just so much toxicity in the gaslighting of like someone going through a spiritual violation and going through something like that when they came in with like an earnest heart. And of course, it's all part of the initiations, and God will turn it around and use it for good. Like that will happen. And that's a strong belief that I hold and carry and believe deeply. But also, like, we don't have to deny the experience, and we also don't have to be victimized by it at the same time. So it's like holding both of this was my experience. This is what I went through. I'm going to process my emotions. I'm going to process it. I'm going to release. I'm going to unhook, and I'm not going to allow it to victimize me anymore. If it was subtly victimizing or just keeping you, kind of in that space. So I have a couple things that I wanted to touch on. Um, okay. Okay. So the first thing is that I've been having some conversations that with women that they were like feeling kind of like interference about coming into the unhooked experience. And I want to say that that is to be expected and comes with the territory. Anytime we're about to break off spiritual bondage or break spiritual agreements that are controlling us, there's going to be pushback. So if you've been feeling like, I want to come in, but then like it's just been like these weird kind of like interference things, like maybe it's a tech issue or maybe every time you go to do it, something comes up, or you feel like there's this like internal battle happening of like, do I actually need this? Do I not? I just want to invite you to renounce any interference around your reclamation process because if you are meant to come in, it's gonna flow in for you and you're gonna know, but it's also really important to use your discernment of like, do I have an aspect of me that is kind of protecting I might be afraid to look at, or something that I know I need to step out of, but I have an attachment to that because that thing worked for me, or I feel like a loyalty to that teacher or that, coach, or what if I was operating in this and now I have to like face myself, And so there can be some interference there. And I just want you to know, like, there's absolutely like no shame or judgment within this field around like your process because we've all, like, all of us that are coming into the unhooked experience are going through a reclamation where we're getting really energetically clear and sovereign around what it is we said yes to in the past, and we're taking ownership, and then God is going to help get us out of that. So, anytime there's a spiritual agreement that you make that you recognize after, like, wow, I don't want to be in that agreement anymore, you don't have to be in that agreement anymore. You get to break that agreement, and we're going to do that in the ceremony. And so, sometimes when we have, these things kind of operating within us and around us, there can be like interference that comes in to try to prevent us from breaking free. And this is a very natural thing, This is why people feel resistance before they go into like a healing or they go into an opportunity for growth. And there can be like some slight resistance of like, I don't really want to do this, or do I? And of course, like honor your process. But as I was having conversations with women, they were like, I felt this interference around coming in, but I knew that it was interference. And it's like, cool, you can acknowledge that and know that as soon as you make the decision that you're going to come in and do it, things are going to start to unravel and you're going to start to break free. And it's going to feel a lot better. And you're really going to be able to experience the blessings that are here for you from this experience. And that interference isn't going to be hanging out around you in that way. So it's just something to note that if that's been happening for you, it's a natural part of the process, it's a type of like spiritual warfare and it's normal on this planet when we're about to break free. Any attachments are always going to fight back harder to keep you in what you're in. So if you've been hooked into a space or with someone whose belief systems have been operating and kind of like leading you in things where you didn't really feel great about it, but it's time to break out, it can kind of push back. So just know that that's natural and you can renounce the interference and ask God, God, am I meant to be a part of this container? And then trust your body, trust your felt sensation, trust the voice of God within, and go from there? Okay. So the next thing that I want to talk about is um, how this unhooked experience is for business and spiritual spaces. So when we call it like the online coaching and mentorship matrix, right? I could name it a lot of other things, but that's just like succinctly like this is what it is. But this also goes for like spiritual teachers. So even if you're not like an entrepreneur, Oh, I'm starting to burp because obviously, like the spiritual community is absolutely riddled with parasitic energies. It's totally hijacked in a lot of spaces. Like the majority of the spiritual community has a very deep hijacking overlay. And wow, I'm just clearing. Um, Yeah, I could talk. I could literally give like a 6 hour seminar on that if I wanted to. But to summarize it, this is also extending out to spiritual communities. So if you have mentored with a spiritual teacher, if you have undergone an experience where even if it was offline, okay, and that goes on to my next point. If you have been in a space with a spiritual teacher that you felt was claiming ownership over you, or that you gave your quanta away to, your power away to, your authority to, you're also going to be able to unhook from that. It's not just about coaches and like businesses and like creating that way. It's also about, I was in like a healing container and my energy was harvested. And if you've been in my world, you know, I've talked extensively about this. I've been in a lot of containers early on in my journey where my energy was harvested. And it was a very deep process for me to release from that. And, you know, God had me go in for a reason so I could teach about it and help others unhook. And, you know, um, I was sharing the other day with a client, like a lot of times, if you're a wayshower and a leader, God will send you into spaces where you recognize, you see the writing on the wall, and that the space is actually not energetically safe, and that it's operating in like a fallen architecture. And then God will have you leave first. And then when you leave, helps allow other people to leave as well. This has happened to me several times when I exited containers that I recognized were causing damage and I didn't want to be associated with. After I left, multiple people left because that's just like how it works when you're a way shower in these spaces. When people see you and they recognize you as like sovereign in their power, grounded, resourced, you know, um, clear, right? And you leave a space, it's like, it's very like, it just supports the group when a leader recognizes, and you don't have to do it loudly, right? You don't have to do it that way. You can just exit. Most of the time, when God had me exit these groups, I didn't say anything other than it's not aligned for me anymore because I'm not going to give that information out. Because, as well, I guess I'm just going to share this. Like, sometimes when you leave a space, the person will be like, why are you leaving? But here's the thing, they're just digging for that information. So then they can weaponize it against their other clients and people that they're trying to lure in. So if you said to someone, I'm leaving because this isn't an energetically safe space and it's damaging and it's creating harm, then, and I've seen this happen before. I made this mistake once where I shared, like, this isn't a safe space and there needs to be some adjustment here. Then the next thing the person's going around saying, this is a safe space and we focus on this and this and this, even though they weren't doing any of that, but because I gave them that feedback. And so after that, you know, God really brought me through this deep self, you know, mastery piece of like, if you give them information that I don't authorize you to give them, because they're going to weaponize it, they can cause more harm to others. And so this is something to consider as well. And so I just want you to know that, like, regardless of like what kind of spaces you've been in, if you've been having like dreams, if people have been coming to mind, like these are the conversations I've been having with the women coming in and feeling the call. It's like, oh my gosh, as soon as I started contemplating this, all of these different people came up that I didn't expect, where I realized I gave my power away to this person 5 years ago, or I did this one event, you know, in-person thing, and I realized, oh my gosh, I gave my power, I never called my quanta back from that person. And so this is what can kind of happen. And the cool thing is that in the ceremony, you're going to be able to call all of that back. And it's going to return to you in a really powerful way. And then you're going to be able to like move forward and, you know, have return to rightful owner of what is yours. Shukriya sakariyata sarviyata. So, just know that we're going to be doing that for any type of person that you've given your power away to in a form of like mentorship, teacher, etc.? Okay. By the way, if you are here and you're commenting, I can't see any of the comments, so I just want to check something here. Oh, hi. Okay, now I can see the comments. Hi, sisters. Thank you for being here. Um, okay, so the other piece that I want to share, that I was having a conversation with a sister about is, um, can this be used for like in-person communities that I've been a part of that I don't want to be a part of anymore? Yes. So the way that I'm going to teach you how to do this, this is the cool thing. The way that I teach you in the ceremony, like I'm going to guide you because I'm going to teach and I'm going to facilitate. That's how it works, in these types of ceremonies. The method is the same. The healing technology, the process is the same, whether it's for the online space or an in-person space. So I am going to give you the opportunity, like especially, things can get really sticky in in-person exchanges as well, because especially if you've been in like a ceremony or a retreat setting or like had a session that went sideways or something like that, or whatever it is, like you're going to be able to do the same process for that. So if you've noticed, like, oh yeah, I was connected to this person in person, I was a part of this community, etc., um, you're going to be able to reclaim for that as well. So, gosh, I'm just feeling the power like returning as I feel like the field. Yeah, and that's going to be really powerful because, um, especially if that community, which I've supported a lot of women in exiting out of communities that were harvesting, that were even, cults and, disguised as, spiritual groups, but were actually cults. And then things happened. And like I've supported a lot of women in this. And what I can say is like when you decide to call your power back and you go into like the multidimensionality of breaking those agreements with those groups, with those spaces. And when we go through this process, it's like there's this like breath of life that comes through, Christ Sophia, of like breathing new life into you. And we're going to also have God really minister to those parts of you that went through those experiences and that maybe closed you off and made you weary of connecting in community again. And the beautiful part about this as well is we're going to be asking for, divine justice for anyone who is still actively, causing harm and who has caused harm in the past. So if like I have, like there's some people coming to mind that I know who are doing the same thing that they were doing years ago and haven't grown or learned as leaders and are still causing damage and spiritually violating people and are being just kind of used, unfortunately, to manipulate and harvest. And, you know, this is such an important thing for us to like call our power back and call it out and also like bring to God's attention that this is an issue and to be taken care of. And it's not our responsibility to like shut these things down unless it's part of our mantle to like speak out, to be a whistleblower, right? To do these things. You have to use your discernment. But what we can do is bring it up into the heavenly courts of justice and let God do what God's going to do about that because it's not okay for spiritual abuse to happen in an online or in a real community. And it's a serious issue. And, this really is damaging for people who are, especially just waking up, who don't really have that discernment yet, that are just excited to like go on their spiritual journey and connect with God and open up to their gifts. And then, of course, it's like a rite of passage to kind of move through these spaces. But if we can make the spiritual community, the personal development community, the spaces of growth and mentorship a safer place, it's going to support humanity, and we're going to be able to move through these collective thresholds a lot faster where people aren't suffering as much and they're not causing harm and to themselves, to others, and they're actually experiencing real breakthrough in their lives. Like their lives are actually changing. They're not just like, getting energy baths and stuff and nothing is changing and they're just like feeding these systems, but they're actually experiencing real breakthrough and their lives are changing and they're able to support others and like the impact goes out and then we can really build the new earth systems and structures here that humanity so desperately needs. So this grid dismantling it's a call to that. It's a call to action to be a part of the solution. And it's a call to action around being able to stand for truth and sovereignty and to build and stand from a new grid in the capacity that you're meant to be a part of, as a student, as a mentor, as a teacher, as a coach, as a leader in any of those forms, and to really call your power back and be an example and an emanation of what it means to co-create in divine will that's not hooked into these systems. And yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful transition that we're in right now. It's going to be kind of uncomfortable for the industries that it's impacting and for people to witness, but it's important that we witness the shadow because that's what's occurring is the shadow is being exposed. And so we witness it and we don't have to demonize the people that have been in these positions. But we do need to be in a space of being able to witness it and make our own choices if we continue to operate within those spaces or not. And what's the kind of like operative system we want to be working with, the organic living light of Christ Sophia of God and co-creating divine will, or doing things that maybe aren't that, but have all the bells and whistles and the right things to say and will get you to where you want to go. But what's the price of that? What are you trading for that? What agreements are you making? Yeah, sure, you could like go and work with like a black magic witch. I'm not saying anybody's doing this, but yeah, you could make money or do whatever, and that could be, but at like what cost? And then where does that come back around? Like what are the consequences of going into these spaces and applying these techniques and manipulation things and harvesting people? And like, what is the spiritual of that? And these are just things to think about when we choose who we work with, where our money goes, who we support, and what we're allowing. So, yeah, it's an exciting time. And so, yeah, if you're feeling called and you would like to join us, I'll put the link here below. And if you have any questions, Jenna and our inboxes are open. And yeah, the experience begins Monday. And of course, it's lifetime access. And the ceremony is going to be on Friday. It's going to be really beautiful. We have an amazing group of powerful women gathering. And yeah, I'm so looking forward to this and really what it means for the entire collective because yeah, it's going to change things in a positive way. So thank you for being here. And I send my love to you. And yeah, I'll see you inside Unhooked. Okay. Bye.